Hey everybody, Jane here, and today I am doing a review on the book Pride and Prejudice. I did consume this as an audiobook, and it is the first Jane Austen I have actually consumed. I did read last year the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and so was excited to actually read the original classic version. I did do this read with Marilee from BookOmens, although she was reading the Pride, Prejudice, and Zombie version because she's read the classic Pride and Prejudice, and I was reading the non-zombie version because I previously read the zombie version. So we were comparing notes and thoughts along the way, and it was a ton of fun. So I will link her channel below if you'd like to check her out. She and I have very similar reading tastes, so if you enjoy the things I read, you'll probably really enjoy her channel as well. So Pride and Prejudice is a classic. I feel like most people know what it's about, but just in case, I will tell you. There is a family called the Bennets, and there are 5 daughters in the Bennet family. There is no son, and because of the way the land was passed down to Mr. Bennet, he can't pass it down to his daughters. It has to go to his cousin. So there is a lot of pressure on Mrs. Bennet, the mother of these 5 girls, to get them married so that they are taken care of, because whenever their dad drops dead, they're basically going to be homeless and without the means to support themselves. And so when a wealthy man moves in next door, they are very excited to try to get at least one of the girls married off, because, then they can assume that that wealthy husband would help the rest of the family should Mr. Bennet pass away, and they would need somebody's help. They go to a ball and meet Mr. Bingley, who is the landowner, and a very wealthy guy, and also his best friend, Mr. Darcy. Now, Bingley is a very chill, carefree kind of guy, and he instantly takes a like to the oldest of the Bennet sisters, Jane. Mr. Darcy is a difficult, prideful man who immediately takes a dislike to everybody, especially Elizabeth, who is ultimately going to be somebody he changes his mind about. But he makes some nasty comments about Elizabeth, which she overhears, and which immediately causes a rift between them. The rest of the book is basically her finding out that Darcy is a better person, or could be better with the right motivation, than he is when they first meet, and all of the other craziness and shenanigans of the Bennet sisters. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5. I am really glad I read it through audiobook, because I had tried reading it in paper form before and had kind of struggles with it. But the audiobook was well done, it was hilarious, and I just had such a blast with it, much more than I expected. I did know the basic plot because I'd seen the Pride and Prejudice movies, but I had also read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies, which is quite similar, with some differences. A couple of things that I noticed in the book or felt in the book that I think are not things that people talk about very much, because a lot of people are talking about this book or have talked about it. They have a lot of opinions, and I generally understand where they're coming from and agree, but I have 2 opinions that are a little bit on the not as popular side. And one is that Mrs. Bennet, her heart is in the right place. We really see Mrs. Bennet as just a kind of crazy, poorly mannered woman. And while I'm not defending the way that she goes about things, I can understand why she acts that way. She's very concerned about having these 5 daughters and no way of supporting them. Back then, women in that world they were very dependent, and the mother is pushing them towards marriage, even though the daughters are really resistant to it, because she is desperate for them to have somebody to take care of them. She knows that she can't do it, and she does have a brother who might help, but that's not the same as having a husband to care for them. So I felt like I had a lot more sympathy for her than I did in the movie versions and in the zombie version of the book. I had a lot more sympathy for her and her plight and the things that were going on with her. I understood why Darcy said the things he did about her, because one of his complaints about Elizabeth was her mother and her mother's bad behavior. But, her mother is no saint, but she is also raising 5 daughters, and she's doing the best she can, and she's very excited and hopeful when her daughters are seeming to catch the eye of men. And I felt like she gets a bad rap, and maybe she doesn't entirely deserve it. Her relationship with her husband is very interesting, and it was interesting that the Bennet sisters growing up seeing their parents who don't really love each other. It makes sense why Elizabeth is so desperate to find somebody to really have a loving relationship with, as opposed to just any man who will take her, which I think is what her mother kind of wants for her. We know Jane is very laid back. Jane could probably love just about anybody. So I don't think there's as much like, ooh, I gotta find love, but we definitely get that from Elizabeth. We get from Elizabeth the, I don't want to be my parents, I don't want the constant fighting. And also, their parents are very mismatched. The father is very intellectual, and the mother is not. She's just not a very bright woman. They tell us. I think she is bright in society ways and not in intellectual ways as the father is. The mother is aware of the world her daughters are living in, but she doesn't want the same things as the father. So I thought that was interesting. I also thought that Mr. Collins is always portrayed very negatively in the movies, and I felt sorry for him, and I felt like he was a better person and in a better place than maybe he's usually given credit for. So Mr. Collins, for anybody who's new to the book, is the cousin who comes in, and one of his goals when he comes to visit his family is to fix the relationship, because Mr. Bennet and his brother, I'm assuming it was his brother, the relative that is Mr. Collins' father, had a falling out. So they've never met Mr. Collins before. Mr. Collins has become a member of the clergy ministry, and he, because he is a man of faith, wants to fix the bonds. And one of those things he also wants to do is to marry one of his cousins so that they don't feel like they're all getting kicked out of the house because of him and because of him inheriting. And he's trying to kind of ease the burden of what is happening to his cousins, and he's aware that it's a burden on his cousins, that, he's not coming in going, I'm such hot stuff. He's coming in, these people are in a really rough situation that I have caused. I can't really solve the fact that I've caused it because the land's entailed, but I want to do the right thing, so I want to marry one of these girls. And the main thing that they complain about is he's very full of himself. He's very egotistical. He's not very bright. And, yes, we absolutely can agree that he would not make a good husband for Elizabeth, but I think he's not a bad person at heart. He is really trying to do the right thing while also protecting his own interests. He is a clergyman who has a patroness, which is Lady Catherine, and so he's very aware of the things that she wants done and how she thinks he should act, because he does want to, keep in her good graces, because until he gets this land, he's got to make a living and support himself too. And, he wants to move up in the church. I mean, he's ambitious in his own way. So I think all of those things, he tends to get represented as this jerk, and part of that is because Elizabeth really doesn't like him. He proposes to her and she says no, and he's like, well, I've heard girls usually say no, so I'll ask you again, because in that world, he is making a good offer. Truthfully, he is. Especially from Miss Bennet's perspective, Elizabeth should have said yes. And I think if she had been raised in a family that the mother and father got along more, she might have said yes, because she does need that marriage and protection. And Mr. Collins could offer it. And, he says, I want to have this relationship with you. I want to have a happy home and all these things. And Elizabeth's like, no, I don't like you like that or at all. And basically, I'm looking for bigger, better things. And at that time, she's not in love with Darcy or anything. She just knows that she wants a marriage that is very romantic and based on love. And while I think especially modern readers can appreciate that, at the time, love matches they happened, and it was great if you could get in a love match, but the reality is a lot of women needed to marry people they didn't necessarily romantically love so that they could have a stable life. And ultimately, Mr. Collins marries Elizabeth's friend Charlotte, who is a little bit more down to earth, realizes that she doesn't have a lot of prospects, she doesn't have a lot of options, and there's a decent guy who, she's been encountering a lot because she's been kind of trying to distract him from Elizabeth because Elizabeth doesn't want his attentions, so she's been kind of taking the brunt of those attentions onto herself. And I don't think she's in love with Mr. Collins, but she certainly sees that he's a valuable asset. She doesn't have a lot of other choices. They should go for it. And here's the thing. If Elizabeth didn't end up with Darcy, her choice to not marry Mr. Collins would probably be kind of a crappy one because she doesn't have a lot of choices. Now, so much of what happens to her happens because of Mr. Darcy. And if she had decided not to marry Mr. Collins but hadn't gotten with Darcy, she basically would have screwed up her whole life because Darcy is the one that keeps them from ruin after her sister makes a horrendous marriage. And Darcy is the one that helps her get back with Jane Jane and Bingley get back together. So that being the case, it allows her opportunities to meet society. So if you're looking at the Bingley-Jane connection, maybe she could have found a man in society that wasn't Darcy. But really, her decision to not marry Mr. Collins, while we applaud it and are excited she finds love, that could have been a really detrimental decision as far as being provided for in the time period. And I think we don't look at that. We look at, her and Darcy are meant to be together, and that's awesome. On the other hand, I also want to throw out that her proposal from Mr. Collins was a heck of a lot more romantic than her first proposal from Darcy. Darcy goes, "You're beneath me, your family's atrocious, I shouldn't like you, but I can't help it, I do, so we should just get married because I'm a hot catch and, for whatever reason, I think you're the cat's meow." Now, Elizabeth does have the decency to refuse him, which sets off a chain of reactions, including her, him realizing, I'm an egotistical jerk, and maybe that's not the way to propose to a girl, being like, you are so far beneath me, but I kind of think you're hot, so we should get married anyway. So I like the changes that Darcy underwent. I do think he was a bit of a jerk, and I do think that if he hadn't made those changes, and I will say, buddy reading this, Marilee really helped me to see those changes happening and to see not just that Darcy was misjudged. He is a little bit misjudged, but also that not only is he slightly misjudged, but he purposely makes changes to be a better person so that Elizabeth can get with him. Because during his proposal and stuff, I was like, man, this guy's a jerk. He just told her she was basically way beneath him, but he's going to lower himself so he can be with her. So anyway, I think those were some of the feelings I had in this book that maybe are not ones that are typically expressed by people reading Pride and Prejudice. I will say I liked Mr. Collins' character so much and the situation so much that I would like to find some way to turn it into a romance novel where a girl is kind of forced to marry her cousin in that situation because of an entailed land. She wants to marry somebody else, but they're no good, kind of a Willoughby from Sense and Sensibility. I've seen the movie, not read the book. That's going to happen soon, maybe August this year. And then ends up married to her cousin, who, she thinks is kind of dumb and doesn't particularly like, but he kind of grows on her. So, yeah. I liked Mr. Collins more than most people do. I like Miss Bennet more than most people do. I thought Darcy was a real jerk and not necessarily a romantic hero that I'm going to be falling for. But I'm glad that he changed his ways and him and Elizabeth ended up happily ever after, and he does make enough changes, make things up to her enough that I was satisfied with the end and their getting together. So, I will be reading more Jane Austen, both the crazy ones, the Sense, Sensibility, and Sea Monsters, and the original traditional text. I do plan to do it as an audio because I definitely think Austen is one that I am going to take in much better as an audiobook versus a physical reading book, reading book. But yeah, that was definitely a much more pleasant experience than I expected from, you know, my issues with reading classics in general and my first attempt at reading Pride and Prejudice, which just, I think I didn't even get to the ball. I just got to the first few pages and was like, nah, not me. But I did enjoy this. It was a good time, and I do plan to read others. I'm really excited about Sense and Sensibility because movie-wise, I always like Sense and Sensibility a little bit more than Pride and Prejudice. I know Pride and Prejudice is like the big one that everybody seems to love, and I liked it okay, but it was never my favorite. Whereas movie-wise, I always really enjoyed Sense and Sensibility a bit better, so I'm hoping that reading that, I will really enjoy that. Although I did enjoy Pride and Prejudice, I want to try some other Austen. So, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, what do you think? Do you have any unpopular thoughts, ideas, or opinions about Pride and Prejudice you'd like to share? Is there anything you would like to point out to me about Pride and Prejudice and, you know, that you'd like me to consider, considering I read it, you know, anything you've thought about that maybe other people don't address very often? Or, you know, are you just in love with Darcy and think I'm completely misjudging him and he's just a sweet guy who was raised by kind of an aunt who's got some ego problems and he was just taking the ego with him and, you know, it's not really a part of who he is? Whatever your comments about Pride and Prejudice, please leave them below. Marilee, if you watch this, I am so glad that we were able to buddy read it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to reading more books together in the future. Definitely check her out. She's amazing, and her channel's amazing, and she reads so much of the same type of stuff I do. So I think you'll really enjoy her. My social media is below. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe. Also, I always let people know at the end of my videos, I am an author, so if you enjoy romance, like Pride and Prejudice, I write a lot of historical romance, although my guys are not jerks. I have many more Mr. Collinses than I do Mr. Darcys, and actually they're probably closer to Mr. Bingleys, because they're just kind of sweet goofballs. One of my friends called them cinnamon rolls, because I said, you know, I have a challenge that I write. I love what I call beta males, and I write werewolf beta males, but beta in the context of sweet family men, not like submissive men. I'd heard them called beta males through Mary Balog. Her men are not the alphas. They are the very sweet, very kind men, but when you're talking werewolves, that can be kind of confusing. So one of my friends coined the phrase cinnamon rolls. She's like, they're not beta males, they're cinnamon roll males. So they're soft and squishy and yummy. Anyway, if you like historical books and don't mind a few cinnamon roll males who are sweet family men and, you know, they're tough when they need to be tough, but they're not going to tell any girls that those girls are beneath them or say nasty things to them or, you know, insult anybody's families. If you can handle those things, feel free to check out my books. I have books on Kindle Unlimited. Most of my werewolf books are on there. I have older books that are wide, so everywhere, Smashwords, Kobo. Several of my books are on Overdrive, so if you have a library that has the Overdrive program, you may be able to find me there. I also have several books in the Audible romance package and on Audible in general. So if you enjoy romance, please check out my books. This has been Jane. I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.